Hi, everyone. My name is Kristen Herman. I'm the Director of Prevention with PCADV, and I'm very excited to have Mary Onufer and Carrie Benson here with Standing Firm and the University of Pittsburgh to talk about their experiences since Act 55 of 2022 was introduced, including talking about their partnerships, activities, and lessons that they've learned since then. So we're very excited to have them here and hope that you get a lot out of this webinar. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Mary.
Thank you so much, Kristen. Thank you for inviting us to be here and to create this hopefully resource that can be used by other DV agencies and partners across the state. My name is Mary Onufer. I am the Senior Account Executive at Standing Firm. Standing Firm is a program of the Women's Center and Shelter of Pittsburgh, and I will be presenting with my colleague Carrie Benson from the University of Pittsburgh.
Hey. Hi, everyone. My name is, as Mary just mentioned, is Carrie. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm really looking forward to talking with you today about our partnership and the work that we're doing at Prevention at Pitt, our sexual violence prevention space at the university, with the help of Standing Firm. Great. So I want to just talk a little bit about Pitt and the work that we're doing. So just to provide a little bit of context about where our work with the Women's Center and Shelter and Standing Firm fits into that. So within our office, our sexual violence prevention education space, we call ourselves Prevention at Pitt for short. We are really working to reduce sexual violence at the university and to better support survivors in our community through dialogue-oriented prevention, community partnerships, which is going to be really important for this conversation, innovative research, and centering student voices in everything that we do. We can go to the next slide.
So just a little bit about Standing Firm and the role that we have played in this partnership. We are, as I said, a program of Women's Center and Shelter of Greater Pittsburgh. We started as a research project about 15 years ago between a local healthcare insurance provider and the University of Pittsburgh. We have been working with employers ever since. And what we really try to do is work with employers to help them understand the importance it is to be aware of the fact that they may have people working in their institutions or their organizations who may either be dealing with the reality of domestic violence, intimate partner violence currently, or who may be a survivor. And so we encourage them to put policies and procedures in place, but also we're there to support organizations like the University of Pittsburgh to help them make sure that they have all the knowledge that they need to create that supportive environment and to take action to support both their students and their employees. And just as I said before, Standing Firm, the Women's Center and Shelter of Greater Pittsburgh was one of the first 6 battered women's programs in the United States. We've just marked our 50th anniversary this year. And for those of you who you may be familiar with Women's Center and Shelter of Pittsburgh, we have been a vibrant part of the community supporting survivors and extended that care well beyond those who need emergency shelter into the community. So last, I guess, 3 years now, the Pennsylvania Department of Education came out with an amendment to Act 55, an amendment to the Article XXG. And in that amendment, it seemed that to us, it seemed like they were really trying to close the gap between some of the requirements for educational institutions from Title VII and Title IX, where they were actually asking people to include employees into the training and the prevention efforts, and to make sure that those folks had the proper resources they need, both internally and externally. And so we saw this as a really interesting opportunity for us to move out of our space of working with nonprofits and profit organizations and to move into the arena of higher education. So one of the first things we did is we reached out to PCHE, which is the Pittsburgh Council of Higher Education. It is a consortium of educational institutions in and around Allegheny County, the city of Pittsburgh. And we reached out to them to talk to them about what we could provide at Standing Firm. And at Standing Firm, we can provide training resources, we can provide e-learning modules, we can provide consultation on policy, procedures. And we reached out to them. We put together a proposal to create a consortium of all of the PCHE members to be part of this and to reach out to them and help them to be actually compliant with Act 55. It was an interesting project for us. And as we started, we started from the mindset of what we do in corporations and nonprofits, but it became very apparent that this was going to be a different kind of situation. There were things that we learned along the way. There were things that we learned from our partners, the University of Pittsburgh being one of them. They had already created a wonderful support system within their university that we could actually, instead of having to start from scratch, which we might have to do with a corporate partner, we were able to build on that structure to look at the policies, procedures, reporting structures, the student support structures that they had in place, and how could we use that to extend the reach beyond what's required by Title VII and Title IX, and to include employees and staff and faculty. But the other really amazing thing, excuse me, that we figured out through our work with the University of Pittsburgh is that we were also training people to become advocates for the students, not just the staff and not just managers on how to deal with the staff, but that people then could become advocates for the students. Students who are, what we realized when we look at what we do at Standing Firm, the basic premise is that we want people to have economic independence. We want people to be able to build lives that are worthwhile all the way through retirement. And we know that if someone is not supported in the workplace, they may leave that job or lose that job, which really puts them in the position of having to stay in a relationship that may not be healthy for them. What we realized with students is that they too, there was a huge economic risk for them, because if they did not disclose, if they did not come to school, if they did not disclose, or they did not seek out resources or support, they were in danger as well, because if they would fail a class, if they dropped out a semester without finishing their courses, that had a major effect on their academic standing, which then in turn would have effect on their financial aid, which then again would have an effect on their long-term ability to be able to graduate and to get a good paying job and achieve that financial independence that we hope to provide, that employers will provide for all of their employees. We also found that not having to build from scratch meant that we could be a little bit more creative in the things that we were doing in our programming, and we could be a little bit more flexible. And so that's where our partnership with the University of Pittsburgh really became important to what we do. They were willing partners, and they worked really hard to help us to put in place what needed to be for Act 55. Now, a couple of years ago, we had a CEO breakfast. It was sponsored by FISA and United Way. And we brought together a bunch of CEOs in the city of Pittsburgh, and we asked them, tell us about what you're doing in your companies. Where are the barriers? Where are the things that are the challenges for you to make sure that you become supportive organizations? And with all of their feedback and all of their caring, we put together kind of this roadmap to action. And our roadmap to action has a few steps to it. And what we found is that it also fit nicely into our Act 55 work. What does your campus culture look like now what does your response team? People had put things in place maybe 5 or 10 years ago and hadn't revisited, and there were some gaps. And so, who was their response team? What did their workplace policies, and how can we then, once we get those things in place, or once we know what's in place, then we can go and we can train the employees. And again, they become agents of the organization. They become advocates for everyone on campus. And then how to provide that ongoing education, and how do they respond to an incident. So the University of Pittsburgh is a very unique place because they had such a firm infrastructure built prior to us coming there, that it really didn't take much for us to kind of fit into their culture. They had a very strong idea of what their campus culture was. They really had a great response team. They had a response team through their HR department, but also for students, they have a student support network where people can report when something isn't quite right with a student, and someone will follow up with them. They have wonderful workplace policies. They are also in the process of looking at some of those policies. And then when we really got to do the work is when we started to work with their employees. And I'll let Carrie talk a little bit more about that. And we are working on different projects in the future and look forward to continuing our work with the University of Pittsburgh. Carrie, would you like to talk a little bit about your experience?
Yeah, so I talked a little bit about our charter for prevention at Pitt, and really that is grounded in what we also call our promises to Pitt. And so we see the charter and our promises kind of deeply woven together. But some of the things that we are really focused on doing in our prevention space includes growing community partnerships, dialogue-based prevention, investing in innovative prevention research, making sure that we are providing professional development and materials to address knowledge gaps, empowerment-based self-defense, ongoing program evaluation, and as I mentioned, that student voice. So I share all of this because one of the things that we were really lucky about our partnership with Standing Firm, and specifically in our work with Mary, has been that this work has really helped us to really grow all of the areas where we are dedicated to making strides in at the University of Pittsburgh. So certainly when we think about growing partnerships, Act 55 in our partnership has really allowed us to deepen our relationships with the community, to take the expertise that Mary and her team have and help to bring it to our campus in very meaningful ways. And some of that includes things like providing professional development, as Mary just mentioned, to our staff and faculty. And we've done this in a variety of different ways, from providing our executive leadership has attended trainings with Standing Firm to help connect them more to this issue and to be thinking about how they can be addressing all types of intimate partner violence in the workplace within their own teams, to connecting with any staff, faculty, or graduate student who wants to attend a workshop, by providing short 1-hour introductory workshops that are really about providing every person on our campus with the basic skills that they need to identify, respond, and refer folks who may be experiencing intimate partner violence. And we've done that with using what we call our survivor support network, has been one of the ways we've really been able to bring folks into that work, which is a group of trained professionals who work to get participate in a variety of different classes to learn how to best support survivors of all forms of gender-based violence on our campus. But Mary has been really helpful in helping us to bridge and to really move forward that idea of professional development within this specific area. And certainly with all of these trainings, there's that dialogue piece of it to help people really be able to think through the topics that we are discussing, and how they could potentially impact their own workplace. The other thing I will mention that that Act 55 did in our partnership specifically with the Women's Center and Shelter and Standing Firm did, is that we also had a in-depth training for direct responders. So trainers from the Women's Center and Shelter came out to do a 5-hour training with folks from our counseling center, Res Life, prevention, Title Title IX, people who are doing direct response work on a regular basis. So we really saw that that particular partnership with us was really helping to move all of our goals and all of our areas forward. And just to note, we've had this incredible partnership with the Women's Center and Shelter, but Act 55 has also helped and to really facilitate some additional partnerships with Pittsburgh Action Against Rape for us to be really strategic in how our work with them looks, from trainings to providing office hours once a week in the Cathedral of Learning, so that students can easily access their support and care. And so one thing I'll mention about our community partnerships piece is that both our MOUs with PAR and the Women's Center and Shelter look a little bit different. And that's a good thing. It helps us to really be able to work with a specific community organization to figure out like what works best for them and what works best for our campus, and to help make sure that the way that we're engaging with one another is appropriate for those needs. And so for us, working with PAR and working with the Women's Center and Shelter just looks a little bit different, but both equally important. And so I think that's a really important piece just to note. And just what you see on the screen here is some of our other prevention at Pitt programs that you'll see, and some of that includes the work that we're doing with the Women's Center and Shelter or with Pittsburgh Action Against Rape, including some things like our walk-in hours. Thanks, Mary. Yeah, and we can, just as a kind of an overview of what we have done specifically with Standing Firm. So this number is actually, I think, probably increased in the last couple months, but Standing Firm has conducted over 10 trainings on our campus that are, again, about the Recognize, Respond, and Refer intervention tool. And again, I really think this is important that we're not asking all members of our community to sit through a 3-hour training, though I would love to have everyone sit through a 3-hour training on intimate partner violence. Instead, what we're really doing is making sure that everyone on our campus has those basic skills to be able to recognize intimate partner violence, to respond, and to refer. So it's a brief training, but it's a really important training to give everyone some basic skills to support every other person on our campus. As I mentioned, we have recently trained all of our executives with Standing Firm and with Mary's support. And then currently we are working on a toolkit for leaders. So thinking about how after folks, especially those in leadership roles, engage with our training materials, how can we provide them with a toolkit that allows them to really think about the next steps that they can take to make sure that their department is doing everything that they can to support survivors and also to keep the department safe. So we're really excited about that. And once we have it created, I think we'd probably be happy to share what we've learned and the work that we've come up with.
Thank you so much, Carrie. And I think that I would add to that as you said, you can't give everybody a 3-hour training, but what is so helpful is that during the 50-minute to 1-hour training that we do for everyone on campus, there is follow-up materials that we share, but also, Carrie talks about the resources on campus. I talk about the resources off campus. But so there is a support for someone who walks out of that training and says, okay, what's next? And where can I go to get information? Because I may not need this right now. I might need it 6 months from now or a year from now. I think that partnership was what has made this so successful, is knowing that, we can be there to give that training. And yet, the University of Pittsburgh is already doing the support work where we can refer people and people can feel like, when this happens, I can be prepared and I can know where to go when I need to be an ally or when I need to support someone who is dealing with the realities of intimate partner violence on campus. And that is both through, students and staff. So a little bit more about our work, and I wanted to share some thoughts for other DV agencies across the state who may be thinking about approaching or working with their local universities. The one thing is that, every institution is different. We really thought, we were going to put out this consortium. We put out a package of what we would offer, what we could do, what we could help with. But what it came down to is that every organization, every university has its own sort of culture and identity and ability to do certain things. And so it became very much tailored to every organization. I know that that probably is something that might scare folks and say, I don't want to start working with 10 different institutions in my area. But by having that base piece, and I think Carrie has talked about this before, by having that package that we put together about all the possibilities, then, the University of Pittsburgh could say, we need this, we need that. They didn't need everything that we could provide, but they were able to choose what would help them. And so that helped us so that working with the universities would not be a really like tailored to every single university. I think that was helpful, Carrie. Was that helpful for you?
Sorry, muted. Yes, very helpful. The way that the standing firm has done this is that we get basically a menu of different options and trainings that we can use and choose from. And it's for me also really helpful as the director of the office to be able to open a document that's super clear and easy to understand, and to be able to say, okay, like, where are our needs, where are our gaps, and where can we make sure that we are using these services and these trainings to best address these gaps, and when. So for example, with our executive training that we offered, it was, it's really hard to do an executive training in September when everything is back to school and everything is really busy. But being able to kind of plan that, like, we have this in our package and we'll be able to do this at this time. Is really, just for planning purposes, I think is really helpful than trying to, on a regular basis, kind of saying, okay, well, what else can you do? Or what else do we need to do? But having that menu of knowing what is available to us at all times is really, really helpful. And then having Mary as being so responsive when we reach out to say, like, we think we're ready to do a training at this time, or we really want to target this particular population, that it's really easy for standing firm to schedule that, but they're also expecting it, which is nice with this MOU, that they're expecting us to reach out. They're expecting these requests to come in. So I think for both of us, it's made working together much more seamless than I think if we didn't have kind of this really wonderful menu that was put together.
Right. And I think what the other thing that we did was when we built this consortium group, we also tried to create a learning cohort. So what we did was we did training sessions back in January and February on certain topics about how to assess your culture, about how to look at your policies. What does a good policy look like? We plan to continue that in the fall with several topics as well, where we could bring everybody together, have them sit through a webinar, help them to share. I mean, it was hard to get people to share at the beginning, but I do think that as we continue to work together, that hopefully that kind of learning cohort will grow as well. And that takes some of the time and effort off us, because we only had to create one webinar. We didn't have to present it to 12 different institutions in the city. We were able to do it at one time. And so that made it doable for our organization as well. Again, just some more thoughts to share, knowing that every institution is different. You may be working with different agencies or offices across the campus. You might be working directly with leadership. You might be working with the Title IX office, HR, the DEI office. It's hard sometimes to figure out who you're working with, but I think that looking to those folks that you can see if you're in who need to work on this or who've been tasked with it. It may take you a while to figure that out, but you will get there. As I said before, and I'll say it again, every institution has a structure to build on. It's not starting from scratch as you might do with someone with another organization. So you need to find out what that structure is and where you can fit in and how you can help them continue the support that they already do through Title VII and through Title IX. Every institution has different languages. What is a responsible employee at one institution may be different in another. What people think about what consider reasonable accommodations, you may think that is detailed by ADA, but it's, it is to an extent, but that doesn't apply to this situation for all institutions. So you have to understand what that means. What does an accommodation mean? Some people purely want it to apply to ADA, and they speak to what they may give, what they may put into their HR policies is different than an accommodation, something that, the kind of language that we use. Um, we also found that sometimes you need to build awareness. You can't, people may not be ready to change policy until they have a why, until they have motivation to do that. And so sometimes by holding trainings and by going in and doing awareness, being part of conversations, you start to build the awareness, which then sort of builds momentum into change. And that's something that you may have to do first. If you are charging for your services, be aware of the funding cycles, look for 3 months before, maybe 3 months to close. Sometimes people have money at the end of a grant period that they haven't spent and are looking to spend on, an organization that fits the details of the grant, or if you want to be planned for, to make sure that there is money for your services, just be aware of those funding cycles. Make sure that you're gathering feedback from your partners, asking them questions, are we presenting the right material? I always like to have Carrie go over the PowerPoints and the information before we present them to anyone, so that she can give me feedback, so that she can, we've also set up, we haven't been great at it, but we're getting better at it, setting up assessments after each one of the trainings take place, so that we can learn more about, how successful we are. Have we actually achieved the goals and objectives that we set out to do when we created our training? Talking to them, working with them, it makes for a really good relationship. And it's helpful. It's helpful to everyone. And hopefully all of us who are in this profession, all of us who are working at educational institutions, we're all about, making sure that people can become their best selves, making sure that they have the right path to become better individuals, that their life will be more fulfilled, that they will be able to live out and use all of their talents in the right ways. And so by working together, I think that we've created some wonderful partnerships and continue. I have put a QR code there for Pitt's Office of Prevention. If you are thinking about working with an educational institution and you would like to show them, what other places are doing, I think that Pitt is an exemplar of what should be happening on a college campus. So please take a moment to take a look at that. And then, there's a contact from myself, and please feel free to contact me with any questions that you might have concerning anything we presented today.